The Excalibur hung motionless in the vastness of space, its once pristine hull now scarred with the faint marks of years spent in mothball. A behemoth of human ingenuity, a relic from a time when Earth had burned its way across the stars in a war of unfathomable scale. But now, as humanity reached its golden age of peace, the ship seemed like a faded memory, better left buried in the ashes of history. The warship, Earth's final weapon of mass destruction, had been consigned to an orbital station awaiting decommissioning, a tool of destruction that would never see the light of day again. Captain Naomi Drake sat alone in the command deck of the Excalibur, her fingers lightly brushing the controls as she stared out at the void. It was strange to her, this feeling of purposelessness. Once she had been one of the galaxy's most feared commanders, the scourge of rebel fleets, and yet now, she was nothing more than a caretaker for an obsolete weapon. The peace that Earth had achieved was something she had once dreamed of. But the quiet, the stillness of the station, this was not the future she had envisioned. She missed the chaos of battle, the certainty of purpose that came with the rush of war. Her crew, a mix of old soldiers and new idealists, were beginning to question why they remained aboard the ship. The younger members had never known war, had never felt the burning need to protect a world that was always on the edge of destruction. Their world was one of diplomacy, peace talks, and technological marvels. To them, the Excalibur was little more than a ghost, a relic of humanity's darkest chapter. Naomi's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden hum of the comm system. A high-priority transmission had been received from Earth's command center. Naomi's gut tightened. High priority meant trouble. She swiped her hand across the console, accepting the call. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of General Alexis Rourke, Earth's head of defense. Her sharp eyes and stern demeanor immediately set Naomi on edge. There was something urgent in the way she spoke, something that put Naomi on high alert. "Captain Drake," Rourke began, "you've been ordered to prepare the Excalibur for deployment. A fleet is incoming, alien, unknown, and they're headed straight for Earth." Naomi blinked, disbelief momentarily freezing her thoughts. It had been decades since Earth had faced any kind of threat. The peace was supposed to last forever. The warships were supposed to be relics of a past that would never return. "They want to fight us?" Naomi's voice was steady, though inside her heart pounded with the sudden resurgence of old instincts. "Not exactly," Rourke replied, her voice grim. "They've given us an ultimatum. Surrender or face annihilation. They're claiming that the Excalibur is a symbol of humanity's aggression and that it threatens the peace of the galaxy. They want the ship destroyed or handed over." Naomi's mind raced. Earth's Excalibur, the last remaining warship, was a symbol, yes, but it was more than that. It was a time capsule of a bygone era, a reminder of humanity's violent past. The idea that it had drawn the attention of a foreign power was both terrifying and absurd. For a moment, Naomi wondered if this was some kind of test, some elaborate diplomatic stunt. But deep down, she knew this wasn't a game. "And if we don't comply?" Naomi asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it. "They'll destroy us," Rourke said bluntly. "We don't have the firepower to stand against them. We're not prepared for this kind of war. We don't even know who they are. I need you to bring the Excalibur into position, ready to defend Earth." Naomi's gaze drifted toward the massive warship that had once been a symbol of humanity's greatest fear and its most powerful weapon. She felt the weight of that legacy bearing down on her. "Understood," she said, her voice a tight whisper. "I'll make the necessary preparations." As the transmission ended, Naomi remained frozen in place, staring at the screen as it faded to black. She hadn't been in combat for years, and the thought of once again commanding a ship built for destruction filled her with a mixture of dread and adrenaline. This wasn't a fight for victory. This was survival. Turning away from the console, she quickly moved to the bridge, calling for her crew. The first officer, Lieutenant Quinn, met her eyes as she entered. His expression was unreadable, but Naomi could see the tension in the way he held himself, the same kind of tension that ran through her own veins. The Excalibur had been dormant for too long. "Captain," Quinn said, his voice firm, We've been briefed. They're serious. Whoever they are, they have the power to wipe us out if we don't act fast. Naomi nodded, her thoughts already racing. There was no room for hesitation. The ship was a weapon, and it had been built for one purpose: to defend humanity at all costs. If Earth was to survive, the Excalibur would have to live up to that purpose once more. She stood tall, a commander once more, and addressed her crew. "Prepare for battle," she said. "We're going to show them why they should never have come to Earth." In the quiet of the warship's command deck, Naomi felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The Excalibur was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of humanity's resilience, its refusal to bow to any force that sought to crush it. And now, it was the last hope of Earth. The silence of space was a heavy blanket, pressing down on the crew of the Excalibur as it surged toward Earth's orbit. The ship's engines hummed with quiet power, each thrust a reminder of the might that it once commanded. But now, as it moved through the void, it felt like an ancient titan being awakened from a long slumber, silent, immense, and ominous. Captain Naomi Drake stood at the command station, her eyes fixed on the planet below. Earth, her home, was a pale blue orb, bathed in the soft glow of its sun. It looked peaceful, serene, a sharp contrast to the chaos now brewing at the edge of its system. The alien fleet was approaching, and with each passing minute, Naomi could feel the tension in the air grow thicker, heavier. "Captain." Lieutenant Quinn's voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable edge of worry in his tone. "We're receiving their transmission. They're demanding our surrender." Naomi's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she wondered if it was a bluff, a mere posturing on the part of the unknown aliens, but the sincerity in Quinn's voice told her otherwise. "Put it through," she ordered. The screen flickered to life once more, and there, floating in front of her, was the figure of an alien, tall, angular, and covered in shimmering silver armor that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. Its face was partially obscured by a helmet, but Naomi could still sense the coldness in its gaze, the detached authority that it carried. It was the leader of the fleet, no doubt. "You are Earth's last warship." The alien's voice was deep, resonating with a strange, reverberating cadence, "and we are here to ensure it will never fire again." Naomi's jaw tightened. The calmness in the alien's voice contrasted sharply with the words it spoke. This wasn't just an alien military force. This was a galactic power with an agenda far beyond a simple military conquest. They weren't here to negotiate, they were here to enforce their dominance. "We won't surrender," Naomi replied, her voice unwavering. "We're not some backwater planet that will bend to your will. The Excalibur is Earth's ship, and it will remain under our control." The alien's helmeted head tilted slightly, a movement that Naomi couldn't interpret. "Your arrogance will be your undoing, Captain. You are standing in the way of peace, a peace we have maintained for millennia. The Excalibur is a threat to that peace. Your weapon will be destroyed, and your species will be judged for the danger you represent." Naomi felt a chill run down her spine, but she held her ground. There was no room for fear. There was only the ship, her crew, and the cold, unforgiving void of space. The alien's final words echoed through the comms. "Prepare to surrender or face annihilation. We will not wait long." The transmission ended abruptly, and the screen flickered back to the image of Earth. Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Naomi turned slowly, her gaze sweeping over her crew. They were all waiting for her to tell them what came next. "Options?" she asked, her voice sharp. "We could try to make contact with Earth's high command, but time's running out," Quinn said. "If we don't act soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Naomi nodded, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of history pressing on her. The Excalibur wasn't just a warship. It was a symbol. If it fell into alien hands, Earth would lose its last vestige of military power. But if they fought back, the consequences could be catastrophic. The aliens had made their intentions clear. Peace at any cost. even if it meant exterminating humanity. "A course for their fleet," Naomi commanded. "We're going to engage them head-on. If they want a fight, we'll give them one." As the ship's engines roared to life, Naomi felt a surge of adrenaline. The familiar thrill of battle began to rise within her. An old feeling, one that had long been buried beneath the layers of peace and diplomacy. But there was no time for hesitation. This wasn't a game. This was survival. "Captain," Quinn said, his voice tight with concern, "we're vastly outgunned. We don't even know the full extent of their capabilities." Naomi turned to him, her eyes hard with resolve. "We'll make it work. We always do. The Excalibur isn't just any warship. We'll use our advantages, and we'll find a way to win." The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but they didn't question her. They trusted her leadership, her instincts, her unwavering belief that humanity could never be defeated. And that trust, Naomi realized, was their most valuable weapon. As the Excalibur closed the distance between itself and the alien fleet, the tension aboard the ship mounted. Each crew member moved with purpose, their every action a reflection of the gravity of their situation. The ship's automated systems were coming online, weapons powering up, shields activating in preparation for the inevitable battle. Naomi stood at the helm. Her fingers curled around the controls, and for the first time in years she felt the weight of command settle into her bones. This was what she was made for: to lead, to fight, to protect. And if these aliens wanted to see humanity's last warship, they were about to see it in action. The Excalibur wasn't just a symbol of Earth's past. It was about to become a testament to humanity's resilience, its refusal to be subjugated. They had come to bury Earth's warship, but in doing so, they would bury their own empires. The alien fleet loomed large now, their ships forming a dark wall across the stars. Naomi steeled herself for what was to come. There would be no turning back after this. Whatever the cost, humanity would stand its ground. The Excalibur glided toward the alien fleet, a looming titan in space. Its sleek, almost ancient design contrasted sharply with the foreign ships ahead, more advanced, more graceful, yet far colder. Naomi stood at the helm, her grip tight on the control panel, her mind focused. The tension in the air was suffocating, the stillness before the storm. Behind her, the crew moved with quiet efficiency, but Naomi could feel their unease. The alien fleet outnumbered them by a wide margin, and their technology was superior. Yet, in the deepest parts of her being, Naomi knew that they could not afford to surrender. The Excalibur was humanity's last defense. "Shields are online, Captain." Quinn's voice broke the silence. He was scanning the incoming fleet with a steady gaze, but there was an edge to his voice, an edge that didn't escape Naomi's notice. "Good," she replied, her voice firm. "Prepare the weapons. Full power to the main guns. We're going to send a message." The Excalibur's engines roared louder, propelling the ship forward. The alien fleet, still maintaining its distance, mirrored their movements. The quiet hum of the ship's core seemed deafening now as the moments stretched on. Naomi's thoughts raced. What was the enemy's endgame? If they only wanted the Excalibur destroyed, why hadn't they just obliterated it from a distance? The fee answer settled uneasily in her chest. The alien fleet wasn't interested in just destruction. They were interested in domination, in making an example of humanity. The ship, the Excalibur, was a symbol of something far greater than just Earth's military power. It was a reminder of humanity's potential, its unyielding will to survive no matter the odds. And that, she suspected, was what they feared most. As the two fleets closed the gap, Naomi activated the comms, hoping to get one last attempt at negotiation. She wasn't foolish enough to think that the aliens would just turn away, but she had to try. "This is Captain Naomi Drake of the Excalibur," her voice rang out across the void. "We do not want war, but we will fight to the last if we have to. We will not surrender. Do you truly believe you can wipe us from existence?" The alien flagship's response was swift. The same tall, angular figure from earlier filled the screen once again, Its expression, if it had one, was cold, devoid of any empathy. "You misunderstand, Captain," the alien spoke, its voice a slow, resonating threat. "You are not powerful enough to defy us. Your ship, your weapons, they are insignificant in the face of our might. Your defiance will only hasten your extinction." Naomi's lips curled into a hard, determined smile. The alien's words didn't scare her. If anything, they only fueled the fire burning within her. Earth had survived too much, fought too hard to let some foreign empire decide its fate. "We'll see about that," she replied, before cutting the transmission. The tension snapped like a taut wire as the Excalibur surged forward, its massive guns swiveling into place. Naomi's heart beat in her chest as the crew prepared for the inevitable. The moment of truth was fast approaching, and there was no turning back now. The first shot came from the enemy, a burst of energy so concentrated it was almost invisible to the naked eye, yet it struck the Excalibur with devastating force. The ship shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring as the shields absorbed the blow. Naomi's body was thrown against the control panel, but she held her ground, forcing herself to stay calm. This was just the beginning. The fight had started. "Shields, holding at 78%, Captain," Quinn called out. "We've sustained minor damage to the starboard side." "Return fire," Naomi barked, her voice sharp. The Excalibur's guns fired in retaliation, sending a pulse of energy crashing into the alien ships. The impact was devastating, and Naomi could see the alien vessels shake, their hulls buckling under the force. But it wasn't enough. The aliens retaliated, their superior firepower overwhelming the Excalibur's defenses. Another shot hit the starboard side, this time breaching the shields and sending sparks flying across the deck. Naomi gritted her teeth, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The battle was not going as planned. The aliens had the upper hand in terms of firepower, and the Excalibur's shields were weakening fast. "Captain, we need to pull back," Quinn shouted, his voice laced with urgency. "We can't keep taking hits like this." "No," Naomi snapped, her eyes blazing with determination. "We're not retreating. We're going to fight back. Full power to the forward guns. Target their flagship." The crew's eyes locked onto her, and for a moment Naomi saw doubt in their faces. They were scared. They knew they were outmatched. But Naomi wasn't just fighting for the Excalibur. She was fighting for humanity. As the Excalibur launched, another barrage, the enemy fleet regrouped, and Naomi saw something shift in the alien commander's eyes. An almost imperceptible flicker of uncertainty. The aliens hadn't expected this much resistance. Humanity, for all its supposed primitive nature, was not backing down. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, something unexpected happened. The alien flagship shifted its position, and a powerful energy surge rippled through the fleet. Naomi's eyes widened in horror as the massive ship's weapons powered up. "Brace for impact," she shouted. A burst of energy, more powerful than anything they had encountered so far, hit the Excalibur directly, its force knocking the ship off course and sending Naomi tumbling to the ground. The crew scrambled to regain control, but the damage was severe, systems were failing, and the Excalibur was losing power at an alarming rate. "Shields are down to 25%, Captain," Quinn reported, his voice tight. "We can't keep this up." Naomi's pulse raced as she pushed herself to her feet, glaring at the screen. The alien flagship was now positioned directly in front of them, its weapons glowing with lethal intent. There was no escape. If they didn't act quickly, the Excalibur would be destroyed. But then, just as Naomi prepared to give the order to fight to the last, something shifted. "Captain," Quinn said, his voice shaky but full of disbelief. "Look at their fleet. Something's wrong." Naomi turned to the screen, her heart pounding. The alien ships were shifting, their formation breaking apart. The flagship, once a pillar of power, was now retreating, its weapons powering down. "What's happening?" Naomi asked, her voice tense with confusion. "I don't know, Captain," Quinn replied, scanning the data. "But I think they're pulling back." The alien commander's face appeared on the screen once more. But this time, the arrogance was gone, replaced with something much darker. "You've made your point, Earth," the alien said. Its tone cold and reluctant. "But remember this. You cannot defeat us. We will return when the time is right. And next time, there will be no mercy." With that, the transmission ended, and the alien fleet vanished into the blackness of space. The Excalibur, battered and broken, was left in the silence of victory. Naomi stood still for a moment, her breath coming in ragged gasps. They had won, but the price had been steep. Earth's last warship was still standing, but the battle was far from over. The Excalibur drifted in the silence that followed, its hull scarred and battered but still intact. The sudden retreat of the alien fleet had left Naomi and her crew in stunned silence. The battle had been brutal, and they were far from unscathed. The ship's systems were on the verge of collapse, and Naomi could hear the soft crackle of sparks from exposed wiring in the far corners of the bridge. Yet the warship was still alive. Humanity was still alive. Naomi's heart pounded as she stood at the helm, staring at the blackness of space. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. How had they survived? Why had the aliens retreated? For a moment, she felt the weight of it all, the enormity of what they had just accomplished. But that moment passed quickly. There was no time for relief. She had to move forward. The future was uncertain, and Earth's fate hung by a thread. "Captain, we've lost communication with Earth," Quinn reported, his voice tight. "The damage to our comms array is severe. We'll need time to get it back online." Naomi's jaw tightened. Time was something they didn't have. The alien fleet might have retreated for now, but Naomi knew this wasn't over. They hadn't given up. It wasn't just a military defeat. It was a strategic retreat. The Tzarak, whatever they were, had too much power, too much at stake to simply walk away. And the implications of what had just transpired weighed heavily on her mind. Earth's last warship had just defeated a superior enemy. But what would the rest of the galaxy think of humanity now? What would Earth's leadership think? Would they view the Excalibur as a symbol of their strength or a dangerous liability? Naomi clenched her fists. No matter what Earth decided, one thing was certain. Humanity had made its stand. "Captain, they're coming back." Quinn's voice cut through the tension, dragging Naomi from her thoughts. "What?" Naomi spun around to face him, her heart leaping in her chest. The alien fleet, which had retreated into the dark reaches of space, was now reappearing on their radar, larger and more powerful than before. The Tzarak had regrouped, and they weren't pulling any punches this time. "We've only got moments before they're in range," Quinn continued, his voice tense. "Their flagship has powered up, and we're not prepared to face them again." Naomi stared at the screen, her mind racing. They were outgunned. They had no way of knowing what kind of reinforcements the Tzarak had called in. But there was no question. The Excalibur couldn't hold out for long without reinforcements or repairs. "Get the weapons online," Naomi ordered, her voice firm despite the storm raging in her mind. "We're not running. We'll fight them until we can't." The crew moved with practiced urgency, powering up the ship's remaining systems. Naomi watched them, knowing that this would be the final battle. There were no more options. Earth's fate would be sealed one way or another in the next few minutes. And then the alien fleet was upon them, like a wave crashing down on the ship. Energy blasts filled the dark expanse of space as the Tzarak unleashed their fury. The Excalibur's shields flared up, absorbing the blasts, but the ship rocked with each strike. The crew was thrown into chaos as the alarms blared, and Naomi had to fight to keep herself steady. The warship was being torn apart, its systems failing faster than they could repair them. "We need to turn this around," Quinn shouted over the din of alarms. "We're losing power in the aft engines. If we don't get them back online, we'll be sitting ducks." Naomi's mind raced. There was only one way out. One desperate move that might give them a fighting chance. It was risky, insanely so, but it was all they had. "Activate the warp drive," she said, her voice steely. "Prepare to jump into the heart of their fleet. We'll hit them hard." If we're going down, we're taking as many of them with us as we can. Quinn stared at her, wide-eyed, the terror in his expression visible even through his calm exterior. Captain, that's insane. The warp drive can't handle that kind of strain. It'll tear the Excalibur apart. Naomi's eyes met his, and for the first time, she saw the doubt in his eyes, the uncertainty. He was afraid, but she couldn't afford to be. She had to be the one to lead them through this. She had to show them that humanity could survive, that humanity would survive. I don't care, Naomi said, her voice low but resolute. We either win this or we don't, but we'll make sure they never forget us. Without another word, Quinn relayed the order to the crew. The Excalibur's engines roared to life and the warp drive began to hum. Naomi could feel the tension in the air, the pull of gravity as the ship began its calculated course toward the heart of the alien fleet. The ship was shaking violently now, damage accumulating, faster than they could contain it. But Naomi stood firm, hands steady on the console, her resolve as unyielding as ever. As the Excalibur tore through space, she felt the thrill of the impending battle rise within her, a feeling she had not experienced in years. The warp drive surged forward, a brilliant light streaking across the darkness of space. The alien ships ahead didn't expect what was coming. The Excalibur slammed into the middle of the Tzarak fleet with a deafening blast, sending shockwaves through space. The alien ships recoiled, their formations in disarray as the Excalibur fired relentlessly at their flagship. For a moment, Naomi thought they might actually do it. She could see the alien flagship tremble under the force of their attack. The ship's shields were failing, its weapons spasming out of control. It was working. They were winning. But then the flagship fired back. A burst of concentrated energy shot toward the Excalibur, hitting it directly in its weakened hull. The Excalibur shuddered violently, its engines faltering. Naomi's heart pounded as the ship began to lose control, the systems flickering and dimming. She could feel the ship losing power beneath her feet, the very life of the vessel slipping away. But Naomi wouldn't give up. She wouldn't surrender. Not now. Fire everything we've got, she yelled, her voice desperate but strong. This is it. With one final surge, the Excalibur fired a last massive blast of energy straight into the alien flagship's core. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the alien flagship exploded in a burst of light, disintegrating in a shockwave that reverberated through space. Naomi's heart stopped as the blast's aftershock rocked the Excalibur, pushing the ship to its limits. The crew fought to keep the ship intact, but there was no denying it. This would be their final battle. As the Excalibur drifted in the aftermath, Naomi watched the remnants of the alien fleet retreat. It was over. They had won. But the price had been steep. The Excalibur was damaged beyond repair, and Naomi knew that there was no coming back from this. But she also knew one thing for sure. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of, and no one would ever forget the day Earth's last warship had buried their empires. And then, in the quiet aftermath, Naomi allowed herself a moment of relief. She had led her crew to victory. Earth's survival had been secured, at least, for now. But the war was far from over. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The Excalibur lay in the cold silence of space, its once mighty hull now a crumpled testament to the ferocity of the battle it had just endured. The ship had done what no one had expected. It had held its ground, taken down an empire, and defied the odds. But the cost was undeniable. Sparks flew from exposed wiring. The faint hum of failing systems was a constant reminder of the destruction. The warship was alive, but only just. Naomi stood at the helm, staring out into the void. The remnants of the Tzarak fleet had scattered, their warships retreating into the darkness, leaving only the echo of their defeat. It was over, at least for now. But Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't won, at least, not fully. Yes, they had driven back an enemy that was far stronger, more advanced and more ruthless than anything humanity had faced. But the Tzarak weren't finished. They had retreated, but they would come back. Naomi knew that. The battle had been catastrophic. The Excalibur was in no condition to fight another. It was a ghost of its former self, its systems failing one by one. Naomi knew they couldn't stay in space much longer. They were stranded in the vastness of the galaxy, far from the safety of Earth. And there was no guarantee that Earth's defense systems could provide enough protection if the Tzarak decided to strike again. "Captain?" Quinn's voice broke, the silence drawing Naomi's attention. He stood near the console, his face drawn and pale from the strain of battle. "We've patched up the communications array, but it's only temporary. We're still getting faint readings from Earth, but it'll take us a while to get a full connection." Naomi nodded, her mind still reeling from the intensity of the battle. The crew, though battered and exhausted, had fought with everything they had. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. They had survived, but for how long, and at what cost? "Can we send a distress signal?" she asked, her voice rough. She could hear the exhaustion in her own tone, but there was no room for weakness. The crew needed her strong now more than ever. Quinn hesitated. "It would take time, Captain. The signal is weak and we don't know if anyone will pick it up. But we can try." Naomi looked down at her hands, the familiar weight of command, settling back into her bones. She was the captain. It was her responsibility to make sure her crew survived, to make sure they were ready for whatever came next. But the weight of the future pressed down on her. Earth might have been safe for now, but the galaxy had just learned one undeniable truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. "There's no time to waste," she said. "Do what you can, Quinn. We need to make contact with Earth. We need to know if they've heard the message we sent." Quinn nodded and turned back to the controls, his face set with determination. Naomi's gaze drifted back to the view of Earth, a distant blue marble in the void. The planet was safe for now, but as Naomi looked at the chaos left in the wake of the battle, she knew that the peace Earth had worked so hard to build was fragile. The Tzarak would return, and next time they might not be so easily defeated. The silence stretched on as the crew worked in tense concentration. Naomi knew that the hardest part wasn't over. The aftermath of the battle was just beginning. There would be no easy answers, no guarantees. But humanity had shown that it could rise to any challenge, face any enemy, and survive. Hours passed in the dead silence of space, each minute feeling like an eternity. Naomi had made her way to the briefing room, alone, her mind a whirl of thoughts and questions. She had always been a soldier, a commander. She had led humanity's last warship in a fight that no one thought they could win. But now, as she sat in the cold silence of the room, she realized how unprepared they were for the aftermath. The Excalibur was still there, floating in space like a titan that had been struck down but refused to fall. It wasn't just the ship that had taken a beating. The crew, her crew, had been through a battle that had shaken them to their core. They had faced their darkest fears and lived to tell the tale. But there would be no victory parades, no medals, just the grim knowledge that the war had only just begun. A soft beep interrupted her thoughts. Quinn's voice crackled over the comms. "Captain, we've established a full connection. Earth's Defense Command is on the line. They've heard everything." Naomi stood, taking a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever came next. This was it, the moment that would determine the future of Earth and her crew. She walked toward the comms console, her mind racing with what she would say, what they would demand. The screen flickered to life and the face of General Rourke appeared. Her face was grim, her eyes reflecting the same weight of the situation that Naomi felt. "Captain Drake?" Rourke's voice was firm, but there was a tremor in it. "We've received your report. You've done the impossible. You've held Earth's last line of defense, but now, we need to talk about what happens next." Naomi's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" "We know that Tzarak have retreated, but that fleet wasn't just a warning shot. They'll be back, Captain, and Earth is not ready for this. We're not ready for this." Naomi felt a coldness settle in her chest. "We've bought time, General, but we won't get more unless we rebuild. We need reinforcements, technology, allies." Rourke nodded slowly. "We'll begin preparing immediately. The Excalibur is critical to our future, Captain. But we need to understand one thing. What the Tzarak came for wasn't just your ship. It's the message it represents. Humanity isn't going to be left alone in this galaxy anymore. The Tzarak's retreat doesn't mean they've given up, it means they'll be watching. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, her mind racing with the implications. She had led the charge to defend Earth, but now humanity had to face the reality of its place in the galaxy. They weren't alone anymore. And the galaxy, for all its vast beauty, was a place where survival wasn't guaranteed. "We'll be ready, General," Naomi said, her voice steady. "We'll make sure the Tzarak know. One thing, we won't be the last warship they have to fight." As the comms went dark and the connection to Earth was severed, Naomi stood alone in the cold, dimly lit room. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. The Excalibur had survived. Humanity had survived. But the next chapter would not be written in peace. It would be written in the stars, in the battles yet to come. And Naomi knew one thing above all else. Humanity's fight had only just begun. The galaxy would never forget the day the last warship of Earth rose again. But, for now, there was no victory to celebrate. There was only the promise of a future where survival meant everything. The Excalibur drifted in the void, a silent sentinel, waiting for the storm to return, and humanity, ever resilient, would stand ready. The quiet of space hung like a thick, unyielding fog around the Excalibur, its once glorious hull now a battered monument to survival. But as Naomi Drake stood on the bridge watching Earth shrink into the distance, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. The battle against the Tzarak had not been won in the conventional sense. The Tzarak had retreated, but their fleet had been a warning, a glimpse of what was to come. Naomi had done what was necessary to protect her crew, to protect Earth, but she knew this fragile victory wouldn't last. The Tzarak weren't the type to let an affront go unpunished. The galaxy was vast, and in its darkness, enemies were always waiting, always watching. Naomi glanced over at her crew, who were working diligently to repair what remained of the Excalibur. Despite their wounds, both physical and emotional, they pressed on with determination. The crew had proven their mettle in the heat of battle, but now Naomi had to wonder, were they prepared for what came next? The crew's resolve was strong, but there was an unease that couldn't be shaken off. Every mission, every repair, every decision Naomi made felt like another step into the unknown. Humanity had shown its strength, but that strength had just put a target on Earth's back. What the Tzarak had done was only the beginning. A soft beep from the comms console pulled Naomi from her thoughts. She turned toward it, and Quinn's voice crackled through, sounding strained. "Captain, we've detected a new signal. It's an alien transmission, encrypted, and it's coming from beyond the edge of the system." Naomi's blood ran cold. The Tzarak? Had they come back already, or was it someone else, someone worse? "Can you trace it?" Naomi asked, her voice steady despite the sudden surge of anxiety that gripped her chest. Quinn hesitated. "It's difficult to pinpoint, Captain, but we're working on it. It's unlike any transmission we've encountered before." Naomi felt the weight of the situation settle heavily on her shoulders. The Excalibur had taken a beating, and her crew was spent. But Earth wasn't safe yet. The message from the Tzarak was clear. Humanity had drawn the attention of powers beyond its understanding, and whatever was coming now, whoever was sending that transmission, wasn't likely to be as forgiving as the Tzarak. For a moment, Naomi allowed herself a deep breath. She had led her crew through the worst battle of their lives, but now, she had to lead them into something even more dangerous, the unknown. She turned back to face the view of the stars, knowing that this was no longer just about Earth's survival. It was about something greater. Humanity's place in the galaxy was now on the line, and the next move would decide if they were to become conquerors or casualties. "We'll find out who's sending that signal," Naomi said, her voice resolute. "And we'll be ready. Earth won't fall, not on my watch." As the transmission continued to pulse through the ship's systems, Naomi knew that the universe had taken notice of humanity, and whether they were prepared for it or not, they would have to meet whatever came next head-on. The Excalibur drifted in the silence of space, its crew united by a single, undeniable truth. Earth's battle for survival was far from over. And, in the deep expanse of the galaxy, new threats were waiting, hungry and relentless. But humanity had one thing that Tzarak didn't understand: its relentless will to survive, to fight, and to adapt. And no matter what came next, they would stand their ground. The stars watched, silent and eternal. The galaxy, vast and filled with unknowns, would soon see whether humanity could withstand the pressure, or whether they would be swallowed by it. And as Naomi stood on the bridge, she knew one thing for certain: the war had only just begun.